Hi everyone, welcome to one of my favorite presentations because this one shows you just how affordable being a mobile lawyer can be. And I think in 2022 and beyond, that's just critical to be able to access information about clients and provide them with services wherever you are. Now, I'm not saying you should work on vacation, of course, but if you want to be out and about and still have access to your data, we'll show you ways to do that. I always like to start these by mentioning the Practice Management Center that's available to all bar members as a benefit of membership. Lots of great information there, and we make updates to that monthly. So feel free to stop by and take a look. And if you have any questions, uh, my email address is there on the first slide. And additionally, you can always reach out either through our Ask the Expert line at tbapmc@affinityconsulting.com or with a 30-minute consult where we're happy to talk with you about whatever tech or law office management issues you might have. Again, service of the bar, it's not a sales pitch, so we're happy to talk about tech or management issues that you might have in your practice. So let's go ahead and dive into our subject for the day. If we'd done this presentation three or more years ago, we would have presumed that your home base is an office. If you've been following what's been going on with market rents and office space in the last year or more, you know that there are a lot of empty office space buildings, a lot of empty space in metropolitan downtowns. And I was watching a business report the other day, and this fellow is in Manhattan, and he said 30% or more of all of these buildings are empty right now. Now, I think that might change, and so we don't want to take, what we did 2 years ago as what the now and future will be, but we have to keep in mind, I think, that if we might want to work from other locations or not have the expense or the obligations of a physical office, let's think about how we can do that, and we can do that in an affordable way. Of course, given our present economic environment, whether you're having perhaps lost some cases or lost some work over the last 2 years, or you're dealing with rising inflation currently, we want to make sure that we use our money judiciously when we spend it on technology for a firm, especially when we're talking about mobile technology. It's going to be everywhere. It might be a little bit more fragile, a little bit more prone to theft, so we want to balance the attraction of features with durability, capabilities, and ruggedness, that sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about what a reasonable budget might be. I'm thinking that if you want some sort of mobility, you're looking at a laptop. You might be looking at a laptop plus an iPad or some other tablet. Couple of advantages to going the tablet route or the plus tablet route might be capturing digital signature. So if you visit people and you actually want to capture the digital equivalent of their wet signature, you would need a tablet and some sort of stylus. Plenty of digital signature platforms that are perfectly binding and contractual and enforceable by law that simply require you to type. But if you want something a little more traditional, particularly if you have older clients, you got to think about the role of a tablet in addition to a traditional laptop. So based on the name of the seminar, you can probably guess the number that I have in my head, and that number would be $1,500. There's nothing magical about this number. What it will do is it will let you get out the door with a good quality laptop, a tablet, and a stylus, and at least a couple months or several months maybe of the subscription costs of different software programs that we'll talk about. So that's where the number came from. If I think going below $1,000, you're probably too low because a couple of laptops here I'll show you in just a minute start out reasonably equipped at $1,500. And then if you want to go up from there, obviously the costs rise as well. And getting into an entry-level iPad with a pencil is going to come in at a few $100. So by the time you add the laptop and the tablet, you're going to be at about $1,500. So you can obviously go above it if you like, but I think $1,500 is a good starting point. So what we want to talk about first are some of the core tools, and we've already touched on these a little bit. We'll start with the hardware, and that's what we're going to focus on for most of our $1,500 because that's the big upfront cost. Just about every software program we talk about, again, since we're emphasizing mobility, will be a subscription-based program. So you'll be paying that every month or every year from when you subscribe to when you cease to practice or cease to use the program at least. In the hardware sphere, I default to a laptop because obviously we're talking about mobility. So it would be kind of odd to say, hey, let's do a desktop here. In the mobile space, the two default laptops that I think of or I recommend to folks when they are looking for a new machine. If you're in the Mac camp, so if you sort of self-selected into that camp, I would start with the MacBook Air. This is a picture of the older model from either 21 or 20. The 22 model is a little bit thinner, and one of the things it adds are the new Apple designed microchips. They no longer use Intel processors. They now use Apple designed microchips. And what that means, a couple of things. On the plus side, what it means is you get phenomenally better battery life than you see out of Intel microchips. So the newest MacBook Air claims, I want to say like 16 or 18 hours of battery life, which is more than a full day. And even if you were doing essentially doing things under load, as they say, meaning you're running the processor very hard, you're running the machine very hard, you're still going to get well above a normal workday's worth of battery without having to plug in. So that's the advantage of the Apple design chips. The disadvantage of the Apple design chips, and this might be getting a little bit more technical for folks, but if you're into technology, it's pretty interesting. When Apple switched from, I think it was IBM and Motorola had been manufacturing their what they called Power PC chips uh, up through 2005, when Apple switched to Intel, one of the advantages that they gained was that they could then run Microsoft Windows natively. So you could not just run Mac OS, which is the primary reason you would buy a Mac, but you could also run Windows. And Apple came out with a way that they called Boot Camp, where you could run them essentially against the bare metal. So you could either boot into Mac OS or you could boot into Windows and use the respective programs. And then on top of that, software vendors, a company called Parallels, so parallels.com, and a company called VMware, which has a long history in virtual machine work, came out with separate programs that will let you run Windows on top of the Mac. So you could essentially be running Apple programs at the same time that you're running Windows programs. And that was super handy for a lot of attorneys, especially if you were, say, in a family law practice and you had to run a child support calculator. Well, a child support calculator only existed on Windows. Certainly in 2005, it probably did. Today, it might just be web-based. But in 2005 up to the last few years, there's been tons of software that would be Windows only that would be for good quality use in a law firm. And so being able to run the Windows stuff and then have the Mac capabilities as well was a nice bonus. You lose that with the Apple chips. So you've gotten tremendously better battery life, but you've lost the ability, at least for the time being, to run Windows natively either on its own or on top of the Mac. There are a couple ways around that, and if you want to talk about those, feel free to drop me an email, but they're kind of esoteric and not for a mainstream legal audience. The Mac laptop there on the left starts out about $1,000 for 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage. Not a bad start. The more web-based programs you'll use, the less actual on-device storage you'll need. On the Windows side over there on the right is a Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. ThinkPads, for those of you interested in the history, were the laptops originally designed and built by IBM. And in 2004, IBM sold the business to Lenovo out of China. And so for the last 17 years or so, Lenovo has been making ThinkPads, and they are still very high quality machines, lots of great capabilities, lots of durability, well respected for business laptops. And that one starts at about $1,000 as well, a little over 1,000. Of course, on that one side, you would be able to run, it runs Windows, so you'd be able to run whatever Windows programs you have that you need for your practice. So keep that in mind. So if you already own a laptop and you're feeling a bit more adventurous, or you want to go laptop plus a tablet, I'm all in favor of that. I've had an iPad since they first came out, gosh, 2010, so like 12 years ago, and I find it useful for all sorts of things. One of the things that I think it is most useful for, and this has been the case in the last 5-ish years since they came out, or maybe even a little more, since they came out with the Apple Pencil, is that you can take handwritten notes with your own handwriting, and it looks very much like your handwriting. So we're not dealing with experiences that you might have had with styluses in the past, and it's certainly not styli maybe that you've had in the past, and certainly not like the one at the checkout counter at the grocery or wherever where you scrawl your name for the credit card if you still do that, and it looks nothing like your signature. These are very, very good. It looks just like my handwriting. So if you're someone who has embraced the digital lifestyle, but you still like to do the handwritten notes, this is a nice compromise. And you'll see there you can get the base iPad for about $330. They upgraded it not too long ago, so you get a little bit more features for the money. You can get a keyboard that works with it for another 160, and then the first generation Apple Pencil will run you $100. So all in, you're at 1587. So if you exclude taxes and you take my laptop choice and my fully decked out iPad, you're actually about 90 bucks over the $1,500. If you're looking to save money, you want to go the route with both. The one I think you could probably most drop from the iPad is the keyboard there, because the pencil is the thing that kind of makes it nice for mobility. Because with a keyboard, you've already got a keyboard on the laptop, so that gets you back down under that $1,500 threshold. You do want to be careful though when you're buying an iPad if you're going the pencil route, because even today, 5 or 6 years after the introduction of the original pencil and 4 years after the introduction of its successor, there are still iPads that work with Generation 1 pencils and iPads that work with Generation 2 pencils. They're both for sale now. So if you buy an iPad and you want a pencil, you got to make sure you're getting the right pencil with the iPad that you picked. So make sure you keep that in mind. Generation 1 pencil is 99 bucks. I think the Generation 2 is 130 or 129. Generation 2 again works only with specific iPads, as does the Generation 1, but it will charge magnetically against the iPads that it was designed to be used with, so you don't have to plug it in separately. And it has a button on it, or a touch sensitive area, so you can change between colors of fake ink or change between erasing and writing or other nice things. So it's kind of nice, but it is a 30% upcharge from the base pencil. Moving beyond the laptop iPad split, we want to talk a little bit about how you're going to do phone calls. So again, we're talking mobility here. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, either for phones, iPads, or laptop, or all three, I would look to the AirPods side. So they've got AirPods ranging from I think $129 today up to $250, and then they've got an over-the-ear set that I want to say is close to $500. Not talking about the over-the-ear ones today. If you're not in the Apple camp, then I would not spend the premium for the AirPods, because almost all the benefit of the AirPods comes from its tight integration with the software that Apple does and the hardware that Apple makes. So if you're not using those, you're just overpaying for earbuds. If I were looking for a set for an Android phone or for a Windows computer, I would look to something either from Anker. They make some great ones. Jabra also makes some great ones. So look in those companies for products that might work for you. And as you see down there at the bottom, these are a little bit outdated because I think they've lowered the price on the middle AirPods down to like 129. But you'll notice even if I lowered that price to 129, there's still a substantial difference between the entry-level AirPods and the earbuds available from Anker over there. Doing phone calls on the go, there are a couple of different ways to do this. It depends on how many people you have to have present there physically. If it's just you, I would stick to the AirPods or to the earbuds. If it's you and some other folks, maybe you want some sort of speakerphone type setup. This one here from Jabra is the 510 model, costs around 200 bucks, and it will do Bluetooth to your phone or Bluetooth to your computer, and you can use it with Zoom, Teams, the phone on your actual smartphone, whatever you want, and it works as a very nice speakerphone setup. If you're looking to save a little bit of money, you could use one of these Echo Dot things that I've gotten, I think, two of them for free from various businesses. And so obviously very inexpensive. They would require some sort of power connection though. This Jabra can run off of the computer or run off a battery. This would require some sort of power connection. Um, Other smart home devices, if you are home, can be used as speakerphones as well. So the Google Home products can do this. Obviously, Alexa can do that because that's what we see here. And even the Apple HomePods, if you're someone who owns a HomePod or a HomePod Mini, they can be speakerphones as well. Although I think in the case of the HomePods, it might again be limited to the Apple products to make that happen. What about paper when you're out and about? Well, when you're out and about with paper, you either want to turn that paper into something you can take back to your home base with you, or you want to take that paper right there and then produce something electronic. If you're interested in producing something electronic, there are a couple of different ways to go about this, and it depends on the volume of paper that you're handling when you're out and about. In the scanner camp, the physical scanner camp, if you're going to bring the paper from the client or from the site back to your home base and you're going to scan it in, a couple of scanners to look at. On the top, we have the Canon DRC240, which is about $600 MSRP. On the bottom, that scanner has actually been replaced by the IX1600, so IX1600. MSRP is still $495, but generally speaking, you'll find it somewhere in the mid to low 400s if you go on Amazon or something like that, and even below possibly if there's a sale. So that's if you're taking the paper back to home base. If you want to scan the paper while you're out at the location or with the client so that the originals can stay there, a couple of devices that can go with you. On the top there, we have the 1300 ScanSnap, again about $300 for that. And at the bottom, we have the IX100. And these are both portable, but they're portable in different contexts. The top one has a power supply, so you can plug it into the wall and plug the other end into the computer, the USB. So you wall outlet and then to the USB. You can also, if you have sufficiently powerful USB ports, I believe you can connect two USB ports to the scanner, the special cable that comes with it, and you can run it off of the computer's battery. The bottom one is strictly battery powered, and it's, I believe, also wireless. So you get a little bit more mobility there. Big difference between the two is that the top one has a sheet feeder. So if you look on the left-hand side, you can obviously see there's a sheet feeder for both of those two models. The top one, the 1300 there, has a sheet feeder as well. It will do up to 10 pages. And so if it's duplex, it'll do up to 20 sides, but 10 physical pages. And you just essentially unfold the machine unless the feeder is at the top. Bottom one is one sheet at a time. So if you have a whole stack of paper like we had in our slide here, then you're going to be scanning for a while if you're doing one sheet at a time. So something to keep in mind. But the one on the bottom, more portable, don't need to worry about plugging it into a computer or to a wall outlet. Of course, we all carry really, really, really good cameras in our pockets or in our purses. And so there are lots and lots of apps out there, and we'll mention a couple to give you some place to start, where you can use the camera on your phone as a scanner. So if you have an iPhone, for the last at least 2, maybe 3 versions of iOS, there is an ability to scan a document into the Notes app, so the built-in Notes app that Apple makes. You do that by bring up a blank note, touch it, and one of the options is like take photo or scan document, I believe. And the nice thing about that, and you're saying, what's the difference between taking a picture of the document and scanning the document? If you scan the document and you've got, normal printout, white paper, black lettering, or whatever, you set it on a desk or some table, the software in the iPhone figures out where the 4 corners of the document are, and it only takes a picture of that. And then it prompts you if you want to add another page, and so you flip the paper, you take another picture, it grabs just the document, the 4 corners based on the contrast between the desk and the paper that's on the desk, and you can keep doing that. You can create a PDF that way, and that's built into the iPhone. There might be that capability in Android. If an Android user would like to reach out and let me know, I'd be grateful for that. If you want something a little more sophisticated than those 2 things that I just described, there are apps out there that are special scanner apps. There's one called Swift Scan Pro that's available for iOS and Android. It adds a couple of things that the built-in notes scanning app doesn't have, one of which is the ability to optically character recognize the text, as well as the ability to upload to a variety of different cloud storage services. So with the built-in iOS app, you save it to Notes, it lives in Notes, but it is a PDF, so you could move it somewhere else. With Scan Pro, you could just go ahead and upload it automatically through that program. If you're on the iPhone camp, another option out there is a program called Scanner Pro, which I really like. So it's a little confusing. There's Scan Pro. There's a variant of Scan Pro called Swift Scan, both of which are subscription and iOS and Android. And then there is from a company called Riaddle, a program called Scanner Pro that is just for iPhones. And the big claim to fame with Scanner Pro is that if you notice when you take a picture of the document with your phone, you've got a shadow of the phone over the document. And they've done some math to figure out how to remove that shadow. So that's a nice thing there. Swift Scan or Scan Pro has the ability to let you fax documents. You can't receive faxes, but if you wanted to scan a document and then fax it to a medical provider or to a government or someplace else that still uses scans, you've got that option there. So that's a nice bonus. So Swift Scan or Scanner Pro, $11 a year on iOS or Android. And if you want to go just the iOS route, use what's built in or look at Scanner Pro. Where are we going to save all of these documents so that we can access them when we're out and about? My default would actually be cloud storage, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I did want to present this for some folks out there who are uncomfortable with the idea of putting their documents or their clients' documents in the trust of Microsoft with OneDrive or Google with Google Drive or anything of the sort like Dropbox, etc. If you're uncomfortable with that, there are options out there like Synology, Buffalo, and Western Digital's My Cloud products. These boxes are essentially hard drive repositories, so you can put 2 to 4 or even more hard drives in, depending on the size of the box you have. And then they live in the network connected at your house or at your office or wherever. And in order to access the documents, you go through an app that they provide for desktops, laptops, mobile devices. And what that app does is it essentially acts as a connector or a carrier between your device, the cloud relay for Synology, for example, and the hard drive with the document back at your home or your office. So the document never lives in the cloud that Synology or Buffalo or Western Digital provide. It's just a connector point between your mobile device and the hard drives in your office. And since Fourth Amendment search and seizure law is pretty well developed and a lot more case law behind it than cloud storage, if you're more comfortable with that, you could go that route. Thing to think about if you go that route is that one, you're going to blow our $1,500 budget because most of these empty, these boxes empty, are going to come in somewhere in the 2 to 700 and up range, and then you got to buy the hard drives to put in them. And two, if something happens to them, that's your problem to solve. So you've got to make sure they're backed up. And there are services that will back these up. There are services that will back these up encrypted, but it's on you to do that. Whereas you can have confidence that Microsoft is taking care of backups for OneDrive and Google for the Google Drive and Dropbox for its business. So the two downsides again, one, you're going to add a minimum of $300 to $700 to the sticker, so we're going to blow past $1,500. But two is that you're on the hook to make sure that the data is backed up, and you're on the hook to make sure that it doesn't get attacked by ransomware or something like that. Let's move on now to some of the software that we should talk about as part of our Mobile Lawyer $1,500 budget. And the nice thing about software in the last several years is that it's all subscription. So you don't have huge upfront payments anymore for even things like Microsoft Office. I would recommend that you get Microsoft Office as a subscription through the Microsoft 365 options. There are several different ones. If you go to the Practice Management Center, we've got links to the comparison charts that Microsoft provides on the different plans for the business and for the enterprise. So the business plans start, if you don't need Office, at somewhere around $5 a month. If you want Office, I think you're at $12 a month. And then the enterprise plans, which doesn't refer necessarily to the size of the business that buys the plan, it refers to the features that you want, start at somewhere around 32 and go up from there. So for most small firms, I would start with the business plans. The only reason that an enterprise plan might be interesting to a solo or small firm is that they have a really good setup for email encryption. So if you've gotten religion about not sending out documents and sensitive emails in clear text to clients, the Microsoft enterprise plans have a way that you can have the server handle email encryption. So the advantage of that being that if you send the email from a phone or from your iPad or from a computer, you don't have to worry about yet another add-in for Outlook or something like that to handle encryption. The email is automatically encrypted when it hits Microsoft server. So everything, irrespective of what plan you're on, is encrypted between Microsoft's server and your local device. And then if you want that email to be encrypted when it goes to John Q client, that's when you need to add something on top of it. And how would the system know that the particular email you're sending out ought to be encrypted versus all the other emails that you're sending out? Well, it looks for keywords that you can define. So if you define encryption or encrypted as a keyword and you use that keyword in the subject of the email, so encrypted proposed settlement agreement, when that email hits the Microsoft server, it sees that the subject line contains the word encrypted. It's going to automatically encrypt that email and then send it on to John Q client. Very handy, very easy to use. Probably the biggest reason, certainly for a solo or small firm, to be considering an enterprise account. There are tons of storage clouds out there. And what we have on the top level, you're probably most familiar with: OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, and Box. Down below, we have things you might be less familiar with. Apple has a Files app for iOS. On the Mac, it's called iCloud Drive. Very easy to store stuff there. If you're, again, all in on the Apple side, that might be a way to go. The one on the bottom left is ShareFile. And what ShareFile allows you to do is that it will let you have a lot of control over files that you put in a cloud and that you want to distribute to somebody. You can make them log in. You can get records of how many people download it. You can track how long the link is out there and when you want to expire it so that no one can access it after a certain point. Lots of good features there, particularly if you do a lot of sharing of documents. The one below Dropbox is a company called Tresorit, and Tresorit is unique in that it makes you define your own encryption key. So if you ask Microsoft or you ask Google or you ask Apple or you ask Dropbox, If the data in their clouds is encrypted, they will say yes, and they will be truthful. All the data that they get is encrypted between your device and their cloud, and it is encrypted on their servers in the cloud. The catch is that they hold the encryption key. So if they're served with a subpoena or a lawful warrant, they can turn over readable data. With Trezort, you have to, in fact, define your own encryption key. And then Trezort can turn over your data, but it's unreadable without the password that you set for it. Now, the inverse of that is if you forget the password, you're not getting your data back and they can't help you get it back. So it's sort of like our discussion earlier with the network attached storage that you would put in your office or home. Advantage to that, but you take some extra responsibility as well. Program on the bottom right is NetDocuments, and that's a full-fledged web-based document management system. So particularly for firms with multiple users, that's very helpful for making sure that all files related to the matters are saved into the document management system. You can make it mandatory so that people can't save to their desktops or their C drives. They have to save in the system. It means everything's in one place. You get a lot of really great security with that, and you get a lot of really great searching and metadata tools also. So finding files created by someone in the last 6 months related to this matter is very easy with NetDocuments. All of the standard sync services that you see up there, Box, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, you can access the files from wherever you are, uh, whether you're in the office, whether you're working from home, whether you're on the go. You can share documents, you can send documents to clients, and you can, in some of them, share whole folders at once. You can obviously upload and download, you can share links, and you can make files available offline. So if you know you're going to be someplace like in an office tower or a hotel basement conference room, and you want to be sure you have access to the most recent versions of those documents, you can make those set up so that they are available offline as well. Pretty standard stuff throughout the sync tool universe, but just wanted to highlight some of the capabilities there. And we haven't talked about price yet. With OneDrive, if you're a subscriber to Microsoft 365, you have at least a terabyte of space available for you to use. And I think they provide 5 gigabytes for free. So if you don't pay them anything, you get 5 gigabytes. On the Google side, you get a little bit, you get space, a lot of space if you pay for what is now called Google Workspace. It used to be G Suite. Get tons of space, just like with Microsoft. Then you get a smaller amount, I want to say 15 gigs free. So if you want to try it out before you pay the money, you can do that. And then Dropbox, I want to say it's 2 terabytes of space, which is tons unless you're doing a lot of video work. And that comes in, I want to say about 100 to 120 a year, and you can pay monthly. So when I'm thinking of that $1,500 budget, I am thinking of the first month's payment at least. Other things to consider that are cloud-based that might be useful and help you work and practice on the go. Practice management software takes up this left-hand column. Clio, you've probably heard of, Rocket Matter, MyCase, Practice Panther, all large, very good case management systems. One thing about all 4 of those is that they don't have full accounting. So you can run bills, you can send invoices, you can receive payments, you can even, in most cases, receive credit card payments from a case management system that is web-based. Only a smaller number of them will do full general ledger accounting. So you can see accounts payable, accounts receivable. You can see what you pay for salary, for health benefits, for lease, for staples, for the office, that sort of thing. If you want all of that in one place, cloud-based solutions to think about would be something like Cosmolex, Centerbase, ActionStep would be good ones to go with there. We talked about some of the cloud-based document storage tools. Those are in the center there. And then, of course, NetDocs down at the bottom of the list if you want a full document management system. The 2 at the top, Time99 and TimeSolve, if you don't want full case management because maybe you are a true solo and you don't see the need for it, then there are programs out there, Bill for Time's another one, that will help you do invoicing and billing, but are less concerned about the individual details or documents related to or calendar appointments for a matter. Although TimeSolve is a product that started out as billing and invoicing and accounting and has added some practice management features to it. And then if you're into e-discovery, if that's part of your practice, programs on the far right there are web-based e-discovery tools to take a look at. Nowadays, we can buy all of our core software through subscriptions. We mentioned Microsoft 365 for the office tools, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, that sort of thing. On the Google side, they've changed the name this year to from G Suite to Google Workspace. But again, you can pay either annually or monthly for that. And then for the last several years, Adobe Acrobat has been available only as a subscription. And it runs, I believe, $15 a month, and you're just paying $15 a month forever. In a little bit, we'll talk about some alternatives to that, and I'll give you a couple of reasons why I think Acrobat's still the way to go. But I do want to make that available that there are some other options out there. Any of these word processors that I show on the screen now, Word would be included with Microsoft 365, formerly Office 365. Google Docs, the one in the center there, would be included with Google Workspace, and then Apple's Pages is free to all people who have an Apple device, basically. And any of these are sync happy, so they'll sync document changes to the cloud and other devices. They make it decently easy to share and track and reconcile changes. I think if you're working in real time, so two of you looking at the document at once, I think Google is probably still the best at that. But Microsoft Word is doing pretty strong as well, especially if you're both using the web-based version of Word. So there's a web-based version of Word that anyone can actually use for free as long as they have a Microsoft account, which is itself also free. And that handles the simultaneous editing much better than if one person's on the web and one person's on the desktop or both are on the desktop. There's more of a delay, but not nearly so bad as it used to be. And then you can do track changes and reconciling and sharing documents with Pages. It's just much less common because Pages is, again, probably best if you're in the all Apple all the time camp. So I mentioned I'd bring up a couple points about PDF readers or PDF software, not readers, because big difference between the PDF reader and PDF creation software is that PDF creation software will let you do additional modifications to it. So a reader is going to, at best, let you comment and possibly do a digital signature through that provider's platform. PDF creation software will let you do that. It will also let you do a couple of core things for attorneys. One is Bates numbering. So again, if you're in the litigation context, like we mentioned, some of those web-based e-discovery tools, you would want a piece of PDF software that would let you do Bates numbering. The other thing to think about out there is redaction, and redaction is becoming more and more critical for filing, particularly. In June of next year, just an example from a nearby bar, the Missouri court system will go to a circumstance where pleadings and filings are readable basically by John Q. Public by default without, you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to have a special login, just basically available as public information. Which means, of course, that they are looking hard and planning for the need to train up attorneys and support staff in Missouri on how to use redaction because their rules require that certain, fairly standard information be redacted. So social security numbers, bank account numbers, child date of birth, child names, financial account numbers, that sort of thing. So they're going to be going through a training and an onboarding for much of the state to ensure that people know how to do this. So those are the couple of reasons you would definitely want some software above and beyond just a PDF reader. If paying $15 a month forever for Adobe Acrobat sounds like a lot, there are available on the left side of the screen, the right side of the screen, products that you can purchase for a one-time fee. Left side of the screen has products that run on Microsoft Windows, so Foxit, Business Advanced. You can buy for about $180 or you can pay $130 a year and have all the updates. It'll do redaction and Bates numbering. There's Copafax Power PDF Advanced, where $180 will give you the full Windows version that does redaction and Bates numbering. And then the next one down there is PDF docs, also available as a purchase that would do those things. Biggest thing to watch out for on Foxit and Kofax is that they also have standard versions like Adobe does, but those don't include the redaction and the Bates numbering. On the right-hand side are products available for Mac users. So the top right is a product called Power PDF Pro. It's $125 single-time purchase. It was also, I believe, recently purchased by, I want to say PDF Docs or Nitro PDF maybe. So it was recently acquired, $125 once. It will do Bates numbering and redaction. The one down below it is PDF Expert from a company called Readdle. So again, we talked about Readdle with their Scanner Pro earlier. This is another one of their products. It runs on the iOS devices. It also runs on the Mac. It has redaction. It does not have Bates numbering. And then the bottom one there is the preview program that comes free for every Mac user. So it's included. You bought a Mac, you got preview. It will do redaction. It will not do Bates numbering though, but it is free. So why would I recommend, based on the alternatives on the left and the right, why would I say that Acrobat's the reason or one of the way to go? Two reasons. One is that it is easiest to find help for. So if it's 11:59, well, let's not say 11:59. Let's say it's 11:45 at night and you've got to file something by midnight and it has to be redacted in certain places and you don't know how to do it. The easiest program of these 7 to find help for on doing that is Adobe Acrobat. So point number 1 as to why it's worth $15 a month. Point number 2 is that it is feature and interface identical between Windows and Mac. So if you move back and forth, you've got one computer that you use for work and one you use for home, or one at the office and one at home, whatever you got. Feature and interface identical between the two. So you don't have to learn 2 different ways of doing something, which is what you would have to do if you use, say, Foxit and Power PDF Pro. But again, $180 once for a couple of these versus $15 per month in perpetuity. So it's a big jump. Of course, we all have experienced over the last couple of years all the web meetings. There is a tremendous benefit if you actually get a paid plan if you haven't done that already. If you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber and you primarily work in a corporate setting, so you work with corporate clients or business clients, you might be good enough to do webinars, or not webinars, but web meetings on Teams. If you interact with the public as your main clientele, over the last 2.5 years, everyone figured out Zoom, so there's something to be said for that. Honestly, I would probably go with Zoom because most people have used that and are most comfortable with it. But again, if you're working with a base that has a lot of Microsoft 365 experience, so that could be, like I said, corporate clients, it could be universities or education clients, then maybe try it with Teams that you might already be paying for and go that route. Let's talk a little bit now about things you want to think about when you're practicing on the go, and think about the materials that you want access to. And these are the list of things that I came up with. You might want to know dates, you might want to know contacts, you might want to know case information, and you might want to know case research. If there are other things that you can think of, feel free to grab one of the 30-minute chats or shoot us an email, and I'd be happy to talk and see what options might be out there. Storage options that you could use a sync service or a NAS. We've talked about those. If you're just sharing case information, maybe you want to use some sort of shared notebook type idea. You could always use web-based case management software, something like Clio or Rocket Matter or MyCase, those sorts of things. If you're a multi-user firm, maybe it's worth considering a web-based DMS, something like NetDocuments. And then, of course, at the most basic level, you want to be able to share calendar and contact information. For the shared notebook side of the equation, OneNote has been out there for years. It's free. Again, all you need is a Microsoft account, which itself is free. So don't think that you can't use OneNote unless you pay for Microsoft 365. It's free to everyone, so a good, easy way to share. And it runs on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. It's got all the platforms covered. From the case management side, most case management programs have some sort of client portal. And depending on the product that you use, the features of the client portal could vary pretty dramatically. For example, ActionStep, great program, has a client portal that does just document sharing. Clio, which is the one I have up on screen now, has two different portals. One for co-counsel, which is what you see up here. And then they have a second one that is strictly for clients. And the client one is, at this point, much simplified from what you see on screen. The client one runs as a phone app, which lets them exchange documents with you. So we talked about using your phone as a document scanner. That's built into the Clio for Client app. And so they can scan documents and send them to you using their phone camera. They can also receive documents from you to review, and they can have essentially texting, but it's really instant messaging within the Clio for Client program. Nice thing about that is the instant messages aren't going to your personal cell phone or to some one corporate or one office cell phone that you then have to parse out into different files. It ties directly to their matter in Clio, so it makes it very handy if you like to use that. So if you're using a different case management program, see what features they have available in their portal, because the term portal is like saying that I drive a car. Well, that could, depending on how I use the term car, that can mean everything from an Econo box up to an Escalade. And there are a lot of different features and capabilities in between those 2 points. Sharing contacts or calendars, these are available in native format. That's CalDAV and CardDAV. So you can send appointments to people in email. If you need some assistance on that, just feel free to set up an appointment. You can either email them, or if you create them via any number of calendaring programs, this will actually happen automatically. When you invite someone, they will get the invite. But very easy to do and a nice way to share, especially if you don't have some sort of centralized system. You can still send invites via email. If you're moving around a lot and you want to use a second monitor, you've gotten accustomed to that, you're used to having it at your home setup or your office setup, there are ways to make that happen on the go too. If you're a Mac user and you have an iPad, so kind of a limited sphere, you can use what's called Sidecar, and that's just built into the Mac, and it just works natively with the iPad. So you just go ahead and turn it on, and it's going to work straight away. Like I said, kind of a limited sphere because you're required to have one of these Macs or newer and iOS 13 or newer. We're now up to iOS 16, so it'll work with additional ones. But again, you got to have a Mac and you got to have an iPad. If you're like me, oh, and the other thing, which I didn't mention on this, is they have to be on the same iCloud account. So as it says down there, let me highlight that. You have to be on the same Apple ID. So if you've got one iCloud account for work and one for personal because you want to keep the things separate, this also will not work because it's required to be on the same account. So if you're in any other situation other than an Apple plus Mac where they're on the same iCloud, what I would recommend you do to turn some other display into a second screen for your laptop is to pick up Duet. And it's, I think, $10 through the various app stores. It works with Windows, it works with Mac, it works with iOS, it works with Android, it works with Chromebooks if you have a Chromebook lying around. So lots of options there to turn a second screen into your second monitor when you're on the go. So very handy. And I would recommend this. I actually use this with, even though I have an iPad and a Mac, I use this because my iPad is a personal product and it's on my personal iCloud, and my Mac is a work product and it is on a work iCloud. If you type a lot of emails and write the same things over and over again, like your signature or your office phone number or email address or whatever, Text Expander or programs like it are a godsend. I picked Text Expander because my good friend Brett Burney has done a course called Text Expander for Lawyers, and he walks you through how lawyers can use Text Expander in a legal context. And Text Expander works on Macs, it works on PCs, it works on iOS, and it works on Android. There are other options if you just want to stay within one ecosystem. If you just want to be in the Mac ecosystem, there's something. If you just want to be in Windows, there are other things. But if you're like most attorneys who have a smartphone, you're likely a Windows using laptop plus an iOS smartphone, then you need something that talks across. And Text Expander is a great example of that. One of the things that I ran into when I was working on the go was that, especially with, say, an iPad, where you only have one screen, you're constantly swapping back and forth between apps, one that might have some research or case notes, and one that is the document you're actually working on. There are a couple of different ways to get around that now in the last couple of years on the iPad. One is a program called Scrivener, which is a word processor. And as you can see, you're $70 in by the time you get the iOS version plus the Mac/Windows version. But the advantage that it has is you see there's a research folder here. And your writing is up here and your research is down here, and you can keep it all within the same container. So for example, and I've automated this here, that if I've got this document up that describes a $1,500 mobile lawyer, and I want to look at research, I can just tap on the research here and it's going to take me into the folder, and I can pull up the PDF that I want to see, you know, remember what I wanted to write about, and I can hit the back button a couple times and I can be back in the document. If you're on Windows or the Mac, you can actually put them side by side. So you're still in the same program, and this all can sync to Dropbox so that, down the road, if you want to access from elsewhere, it'll all be there. But you can, again, see the document and the research materials side by side. Makes it very handy, especially if you're in a one screen scenario. A couple of other things to think about are all of the, and this is iPad specific actually, all of the great um, apps out there for note taking on the iPad. And so this is a separate example of how you might want to use split screen on an iPad specifically. You have the document or the source material on the right, and you've got notes that you're taking on it. On the left, I have the notes on the left because I'm left-handed. But the right, you'll see is just a standard PDF or whatever you want to put up. You can actually also have two Microsoft Word windows side by side if you want to do that. So other ways to go about that. If you're wondering what note app to use, if you've gone the iPad route for mobility, there's Notability and there's GoodNotes. They're kind of like, I don't know, let's say Coke and Pepsi, or back in the day, WordPerfect and Word. They were one-upping each other, constantly improving, playing back and forth against each other. And then we as users were the beneficiaries. So you can't go wrong with Notability. You can't go wrong with GoodNotes. They're both iPad only, and they're both excellent. So this is an example of GoodNotes both on the iPad and then the same thing on my iPhone. Now I can't use a stylus on the iPhone, but I can still pull up the notes and, well, it's my handwriting, kind of read them. And then of course they also, again, you can, as I said, you could have the two column or two apps side by side, notes on the left, in my case, document on the right. Notability and GoodNotes also have something that's really awesome, and that is that they can search your handwritten text. So here we have a picture and we have some handwritten text. We do a search and we can find the word 200 that was actually written in by hand and not something that was typed into the document. So really great option there, especially if you like to take notes on source material and then you want to be able to search them. You do have to import the PDF into Notability or GoodNotes, but then it'll be searchable. And then one last sort of program I want to talk about for mobility folks is a product called Liquid Text, and it's really interesting because again, this is iPad only. You put a PDF in there, and then you can essentially pull out bits of the document and create like a tack board or a cork board below of the important things. You can also take handwritten notes and put them down there. And so you can pull out the important ideas, you can connect important ideas together. So it's essentially a combination of sort of researching, note taking, and then also doing some mind mapping type things. I think it's really awesome the way they did that. And of course, you can put them side by side again. So you get maybe you have some source material on the left, you have another document that you already have in liquid text, and you're working on them simultaneously. So lots of great options to make mobility a strong fundamental part of your workflow as an attorney and as a legal professional. And if you take the hardware plus a month or two of subscription, you're going to be at about that $1,500, maybe a little over, certainly over if you add one of those network attached storage devices. So hopefully that's given you something to think about, especially if you're starting out on your own or thinking about being able to go to the client as opposed to the client coming to you. I have a lot of attorneys who offered going to the client as a service during the pandemic. Client got used to it and likes it, and now they expect it. So if that's the case with your clients, think about how some of the stuff we talked about can add to your mobile practice. And if you have any questions, reach out to me at any of these contact points. Thanks.